Sometimes reality is far more shocking than fiction. She was just about the age of a high schooler when she started living this wild life as an assassin. For 6 whole years, she was always on the move, dodging trouble. Whenever there was a gang fight, it always ended up really bad. When we think of tough drug lords, big names like Pablo Escobar or El Chapo probably pop into your head, right? But what if I told you that some of the toughest narcos out there were women? Yep, these are the women who didn't just watch from the sidelines. They ran the whole show, earning respect by being utterly ruthless, and even knocked out their rivals to grab power. Surprised? It makes sense, since we usually think of war and crime as things only men do. Like what Zainab Salbay said of women, like life, peace begins with women. We are the first to forge lines of alliance and collaborate across conflict divides. Now, what if it goes the other way around and women decide to take up war? Here are some of the most fierce female narcos ever. Number 1. Sandra Avila Beltran. Sandra Avila Beltran's life could totally be a movie, full of cartel drama and deep betrayals. Growing up in the infamous Sinaloa cartel, Sandra was right at home in the crime world. Her family connections, her dad, a Quintero, and her uncle, a big-time cartel boss, pretty much meant she was always going to live a life surrounded by danger and illegal activities. From when she was super young, Sandra was all in on the cartel life. By just 13, she was already counting piles of dirty cash and managing to stay cool in shootouts that could shake even the toughest guys. She could have gone to college for journalism, but everyone said she always seemed on edge, like she couldn't escape her family's dark shadow. By her 20s, Sandra wasn't just part of her family's operations, she was crucial to them. She was so trusted that she even worked with Armando Carrillo Fuentes from the Juarez cartel. Her marriages were more about power than love, connecting with guys who were ex-police but now into trafficking, and both of them ended up dead because of their dangerous lifestyle. There were even whispers about her being close to El Chapo, managing tricky public relations for the cartel. Super risky, but also very influential. Her relationship with Juan Diego Espinoza Ramirez, also known as the Tiger, who was a major connector between Mexican and Colombian drug lords, really spiced things up. They did well together until a huge slip-up. When U.S. authorities caught a boat filled with 9 tons of cocaine, Sandra, now nicknamed the Queen of the Pacific, was suddenly a main target for the DEA. After hiding from the law for a while, they finally caught her in 2007. She tried to play it off like she was just a businesswoman in the fashion industry, but the court didn't buy it. In prison, she demanded to live in luxury, totally upset when they wouldn't give her fancy meals. She was a diva to the end. Sandra got out in 2015 and now lives in Guadalajara. She might be laying low, but she's still the queen of her crazy, tragic story. Number 2. Melissa Margarita Calderon Ojeda. Melissa Margarita Calderon Ojeda, also known as La China, wasn't just any leader. She was at the helm of a cartel army known for being brutally ruthless, shocking even her tough male soldiers, rivals, and boyfriends. Born amidst the lively mess of Mexico on August 12, 1984, Melissa found herself on a dark path into the underworld by the time she was just 20. In 2005, she joined a group within the infamous Sinaloa cartel called the Domaso faction, starting her terrifying climb to the top. Driven by intense ambition and a captivating charm, La China quickly moved up the ranks using aggression and charm as her main tools. By 2008, she was in charge of her own armed group, and under her leadership, crime skyrocketed. She was known for brutal actions like killing cops, kidnapping people for ransom, and chopping up her enemies. Her group was blamed for at least 178 deaths. Her way of leading was straightforward. If you did well in spreading fear, you got paid well, often with big amounts of drugs. Then in 2014, things took a big turn when the head of the Domaso cartel, El Grande, killed Melissa's boyfriend Eric, ending her time with them abruptly. Driven by revenge, Melissa gathered 300 loyal followers and, with her new guy, Hector Pedro Camarero Gomez, nicknamed El Chino, she started a new and even more ruthless group called Las Fuerzas. They were known for fierce territory fights and massive destruction, making Melissa constantly dodge the police. In one brutal instance, she killed car dealers just to escape a debt, an act so cruel that even her own hitman was horrified and threatened to go to the cops. La China's response was brutal. She cut off his forearms, shot him in the head, and buried him. Eventually, the chaos was too much even for El Chino, who turned into an informant, ran to the authorities, and ratted out Melissa's location. Melissa's downfall came fast. On September 20th, 2015, as she tried to escape, the authorities caught her at Cabo San Lucas International Airport. Arrested and facing a lifetime in prison, Melissa Calderon Ojeda's reign of terror came to an abrupt end. Number 3. Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel. Let's talk about Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, who everyone knows as La Catrina. She wasn't just any rancher's daughter from the small dusty town of Tepalcatepec. No, she was the brain behind a whole lot of chaos, practically a queen in a widely disorderly world. Instead of sticking with a normal life of going to school and aiming for a steady job, in 2017, she completely ditched her old self to join the Jalisco New Generation cartel in Oaxaca. And get this, it wasn't because she was head over heels for Miguel Fernandez, a big-time drug lord. She was all in for the fame and the money. Maria moved up the ranks super fast and wasn't just hanging in the background. She showed off her new riches on social media and picked up the nickname La Catrina, after the famous Day of the Dead skeleton lady, a nod to her deadly business. She led a crew of sicarios, young, pretty women who used their looks to trick and take out enemies with chilling accuracy. Maria's drive was limitless. She went from being a team leader to running a major hit squad. Under her lead, they pulled off assassinations, kidnappings, and shakedowns. The real horror show happened in October 2017, when her team ambushed Mexican police who were there to serve a warrant. The attack was brutal, 13 officers dead and several others hurt. It sent a clear, violent message to the authorities, and suddenly, Maria was a major target. But her empire was shaky, like it was built on sand. On January 10, 2020, the National Guard trapped her and her squad in a fierce gunfight at their hideout. Maria got hit in the neck, and just like that, her control was over. They caught her and flew her out, but she died from her wounds at only 21. Her crew, who once felt invincible, ended up captured and powerless. It just goes to show how fast everything can change. One day you're on top, and the next you're not. Number 4. Donna Leti. Just saying the name Donna Leti is enough to send shivers down the spines of many across the crime-filled areas of Mexico. Leticia Rodriguez Lara, who once upheld the law as a member of the Federal Judicial Police, transformed into a figure of both awe and fear in the criminal underworld. Raised in the shadowy world of crime in Veracruz, she wasn't just another person in the crowd. She was born to shake things up. Her story isn't about switching from being a cop to diving into the dark world of drug trafficking. It's about a woman bold enough to take on the big shots of the drug world. Locals called her the Queen of Riviera Maya, showing she had tight control over the drug scene in southern Mexico. But before she became infamous, Donna was a police officer, a cop who hung up her badge to join the ranks of El Chapo's notorious Sinaloa cartel. El Chapo was captivated by her fearlessness, seeing in Donna Leti something he didn't find in his male officers, a daring boldness, or maybe even madness, the kind that drives someone to charge into gunfire with just a machine gun. Well, not literally, but you get the picture. Her guts were real, and it wasn't long before she flipped the script. Turning against El Chapo, she didn't just switch sides, she declared her own war against the Gulf Cartel, determined to take over. The infamous Los Zetas, known for their harsh ways of violence, were just another part of her story. Donna Leti faced them head-on, breaking apart their operations and proving those who called her crazy in the head right. Even after her arrest, her legend lives on, a story of fear mixed with a kind of respect, whispered about all over Mexico. Donna Leti didn't just join the cartel wars, she became the war itself, a legend forever etched in the history of crime. Number 5. La Flaca. Don't be fooled by the nickname. La Flaca wasn't weak at all. Joselyn Alejandro Nino, who came from a simple family in Tamaulipas, Mexico, didn't get her nickname because she was skinny. It was because she was tied to the creepy Mexican figure known as Our Lady of Holy Death. By the time she was in high school, she wasn't just going to class, she was already deep in the violent world of the Gulf Cartel. Her life as a teenage assassin was far from cool or exciting. Under the command of ruthless bosses, La Flaca was a fierce killer, small but terrifying, especially with how easily she handled a big gun. Climbing up in the cartel was dangerous, full of betrayal and violence. A scary photo of her, coldly smiling with a gun in a bare room, spread all over the internet in January 2015. This picture showed her young face but highlighted the brutal reality of her life. This fame was dangerous. It made her a target for the police and enemy cartels. La Flaca was in a tough gang called the Ciclonas, led by Angel Eduardo Prado Rodriguez. They were in a nasty fight with Los Metros, another cartel group. Her sudden fame weakened her own gang and set her up for a harsh end. Sent into enemy territory, Los Metros area, her ending was both sad and certain. On a dark day in April 2015, they found her remains cut up and kept in a freezer in Matamoros, Tamaulipas. Identified by a Nino tattoo on her arm, she had been horribly tortured before she died. This gruesome find was spread all over social media by Los Metros. a dark warning of the cruel and unforgiving drug world, where lives are cheap and deaths are just brutal messages. Number 6. La Jefa. La Jefa, or the Boss, wasn't just a nickname. It was like a prediction for Enedina, Arellano, Felix in the tough world of Mexican cartels. Born on April 12, 1961, in the notorious drug spot of Sinaloa, Enedina was pretty much destined to take up the family trade. With her family deeply involved in drug trafficking and her older brother learning the ropes from their uncle, the big-time Miguel Angel Felix Gerardo, it was clear she was born into the business. Despite getting a degree in accounting, Enedina didn't use it to leave the crime world behind. Instead, she turned it into her superpower, becoming the money mastermind for her brothers in the infamous Tijuana cartel. But when the Guadalajara cartel fell apart in 1989, leaving chaos behind, Enedina's journey took a sharp and dark turn. She got involved with Armando Lopez, who was close to El Chapo, but that ended abruptly when her own brothers killed Lopez, a harsh taste of how brutal cartel justice can be. Family tragedies didn't stop her, if anything. They pushed her to aim higher. When El Chuy, the previous money boss, died in 2000, Enedina grabbed the chance to take over, outsmarting her brothers to take the lead. By 2008, with her brother Eduardo arrested, Enedina, now known as La Jefa, was the undisputed boss of the Tijuana cartel. But Enedina's story isn't the usual violent drug lord tale. Ironically, living up to Zainab Salabi's vision, she chose a smarter and more business-like path. She focused on bribery and dealing drugs over outright violence. Her knack for strategy and keeping out of the spotlight not only kept her alive but also protected her son, making her a rare figure in the deadly drug world. Despite keeping a low profile, she still runs one of the biggest cartels and hasn't become a main target for the DEA or Mexican authorities. La Jefa truly runs things from the shadows. Her legacy built on both her family roots and her clever business moves.